Understanding and accurately interpreting test and inspection reports is fundamental across industries, from construction and manufacturing to pharmaceuticals, engineering, and beyond. Yet, inaccurate interpretation of these reports remains a common challenge, often leading to costly mistakes, safety hazards, failed compliance audits, or even reputational damage. To appreciate why this happens and how it can be avoided, it's essential to first consider the nature of these reports and the roles they play. Test and inspection reports are detailed records generated during the assessment of products, processes, or systems. They typically include raw data, measurements, observations, and conclusions regarding conformity to specifications, standards, or regulations. For example, a construction inspector might record the compressive strength achieved in a concrete sample, while a pharmaceutical quality control technician could describe the results of drug purity and potency tests. The ultimate goal of these reports is to inform decision-making. They guide whether a batch should be released, a structure can continue being built, or corrective action is required. This places considerable importance not just on the accuracy of the data collected, but on the clarity and reliability of their interpretation. Inaccurate interpretation stems from several root causes. First and foremost is inadequate technical understanding. Test and inspection data often employ specialized terminology, measurement units, tolerance levels, or industry-specific statistical methods. Without a sufficient grasp of the subject matter, those reviewing the report may misjudge what the numbers or findings mean. For instance, misunderstanding the acceptable limits for a contaminant in a water quality test may inadvertently lead to unsafe water being declared potable. Another contributing factor is poorly presented or ambiguous information within the reports themselves. Test results that are explained unclearly or which lack explanation of methods and criteria can be misread by those unfamiliar with the context. Imagine a scenario where an electrical component passes a continuity test, but the definition of pass is not properly outlined. An engineer might mistakenly accept a part with marginal or failing resistance. Human cognitive bias can also play a role. Confirmation bias, for example, might cause someone to focus on data that supports an expected outcome rather than impartially considering all evidence. Pressure to meet deadlines, cost targets, or production quotas might motivate stakeholders to interpret marginal or borderline results more favorably, ignoring subtle warning signs. Language barriers and cultural differences can further impact how findings are perceived, especially in international projects or multinational teams. Misinterpretations may occur due to mistranslations, differing metric systems, or contrasting professional standards and practices. The consequences of these inaccurate interpretations can be serious. They may result in faulty products reaching consumers, regulatory penalties, project delays, or the need for expensive rework. In more severe cases, safety may be compromised. Consider the far-reaching impacts if aircraft components, pharmaceuticals, or medical devices are cleared based on misinterpreted data. How, then, can organizations and individuals reduce the risk of these costly errors? First, investing in training is crucial. All personnel who generate, review, or act on test and inspection reports should be well-versed in the technical basics, testing procedures, industry standards, and how to interpret statistical information. Ongoing education helps keep skills sharp and knowledge current. Second, clear communication is essential. Reports should be standardized, well-structured, and written in plain language where possible, with any technical terms or abbreviations carefully defined. Providing context for test results, such as reference ranges or accept-reject criteria, makes it much easier to understand at a glance. Third, organizations should foster a culture of critical thinking and peer review. Encouraging double-checking, seeking input from colleagues, and instituting regular audits of both the data and the conclusions drawn from it can catch misinterpretations before they lead to larger issues. By recognizing the complexities of interpreting test and inspection reports, understanding the sources of error, and implementing practical solutions, organizations can safeguard against inaccurate interpretations and uphold the highest standards of quality, safety, and compliance.